Um, Thank you very much for joining me today. The subject that we're talking about is something that I think a lot of product managers wonder, even experienced product managers, because the nature of our discipline just varies so much across companies of different types, uh, contexts of different industries and basically everything, right? Still a relatively new discipline. So there's a lot of questions. So I've had a pretty unique experience being a product manager at both a startup and then a big company, and actually managing the same team throughout both with the same product, which does not happen a lot. So I'm going to share that perspective with you guys today. So a little bit about me. So those black PR letters are supposed to be a flag. It's an emoji, but apparently it's not showing up. There's a few emojis in this presentation that are apparently not going to show up, so sorry for the random letters. I'm from Puerto Rico, born and raised 100%. And I came to the US for college. I studied at Tufts University, and my major was in cognitive and brain science, which is a lot more relevant to product management than most people think. After college, I spent some time at a startup in Boston. That was kind of a disaster, so we're not going to talk about that today. And then I moved to New York City to start working at FieldLens. We'll talk about FieldLens in a second. That started at 2014. Long story short, FieldLens was acquired by WeWork in 2017. Fast forward, that brings me to today. Product manager at WeWork, the We company is what it's now called, specifically in the Red Tech department. Red Tech is our shorthand for real estate and development technology. We build tools and products for the real estate industry within WeWork. Main takeaways from today's talk. I would like for you, or rather my goal is for you all to leave with knowledge about the main differences in product management between a startup and a large company. Leave with an understanding of what the skills that you need to succeed in both of these environments, right? So I'm going to talk about the differences between the two company sizes, and then no matter what that company size is, the skills that you need to succeed. And then I would like for you to leave with a better understanding of which one of these two might be best for you. I see that there's a lot of relatively new people to product here. So a couple disclaimers. First of all, the definition of a startup and a big company here. For a startup, I'm using a company that's less than 5 years of age, less than 100 people or so, generally in that range. If you are in a startup, you definitely know that you're in a startup. And as a big company, I'm talking about an organization that has thousands of employees or more. Tech department is also in the thousands. WeWork's tech department is also in the thousands. We market ourselves as a startup, but the reality is we are a large company. There's no way a 10,000 people company is a startup. That's just not how it works. So those are my points of references for this conversation. And this is unique based on my unique experience. I obviously cannot speak for everything, and I do not know the answers to everything. And this is not, the written word of law by any means. This is from my perspective. Other companies may and certainly will differ. So for context, what is FieldLens? I'm going to talk to you about FieldLens right now because some of the examples that I may use come from this. This is the product and the product team that I have been working with for the past 5 years, first as a startup, then through an acquisition, and now post-acquisition into a growth within a large company. It is specifically a construction management product. So we build FieldLens for the people that are building the WeWork building. So the people that are installing the floor, the fridge, the bathrooms, the storefront, the security, the tech, everything, right? Those are our users. It's also architects that are involved in that project, in that process. This is an example of what the product actually looks like. You see an actual construction blueprint there with some tasks on it. That's what FieldLens is. So FieldLens first launched in March 2014 as a startup. It was acquired by WeWork in June of 2017. It's now used worldwide on all of the projects around the world in 5 languages. And that's the example we're using today.
So I just want to understand. So this is like a task task management and resource management?
Yes, it is Jira, but for construction. Basically what it is. So we do still maintain outside customers for the record. We are not an internal tool. All right, so I like corgis, and there's corgis in all my presentations. We're going to talk about the differences between large and startups, large companies and startups. Two corgis are different colors. That's just my clever way of introducing them into my presentation. Let's get started. So the first thing is a big fish in a small pond versus a small fish, big pond. Neither of these is better than the other. They are just different. In a startup, you're in the right in the middle of the action. Everything that you do is mission critical. It is often the case that the product strategy is the company strategy, right? You need more than a good product to build a good software business. That is true. But if you don't have a good product, you don't even have that opportunity. It's not an option. So everything that you do as a product manager in a startup is very visible to everyone. Everyone knows who you are, and everyone knows what you're doing. So you are effectively a big fish in a small pond. At a big company, a place like WeWork, where there are thousands of people in the technology organization, you are a small fish in a big pond. You and your product strategy are part of a wider product strategy. You are one piece within a larger opportunity, a larger initiative, a larger strategy. That doesn't mean that you are less important. In order for big companies to execute large initiatives and to go like capture swaths of the market, they need all of the bits and pieces to work correctly. So all of the product managers and product teams have to be very good. So as a result of that, no one knows what you're doing or who you are. Few people at WeWork know who I am unless they interface with me in some capacity. A few people have already come up and said, "Hey, do you know this person?" No, I don't. Sorry, and they don't know me. So on to the next thing. So direct effect on company metrics versus identifying proxies. We'll get to that in a second. Because you are mission critical and everything that you do is very tied to the success of the company, the measurements that you use for product success are very often either the same or directly tied to the measurements that the company uses to measure its own success. I'll give you an example. When I was at FieldLens and we were a startup, we focus on conversion rate, right? Conversion rate gets people to demos, demos get people to sales, money in the bank. We also focused on first and second week retention rate. First and second week retention rate allowed us to measure how sticky the product was, right? That actually led to further increases in buying the product, which led to money. This is pretty straightforward, right? There's not a lot of degrees of separation between the things that you work on in your product and the things that the company needs to be able to succeed. When you get to a large company, though, you are in a very different environment, and you need to be able to identify the proxies. And when I say proxies, I mean like what are the levers that you are going to pull that are going to have an effect on the overall company. We switched from caring about first and second week retention rate to focusing upon CapEx savings. And now we're talking about a whole lot more money and a bigger impact. But in order for us to actually talk about how much money, we have to tie the inner workings of the product and the day-to-day, the person that's swinging a hammer on site, how much that person's usage of my product actually has an effect on WeWork's bottom line. There are many degrees of separation between those two, and you have to figure out and connect the dots. So not straightforward. This is actually very difficult and takes a lot of work, and it's not immediate. In fact, if you get to a big company, your first responsibility should be, how is my product actually getting impact? So a startup, you have a direct line to the CEO and the executives, and as importantly, they have a direct line to you. So in a small company or a startup, you co-own the product and the product strategy with all of the executives. They are sometimes in the same room as you. When I was in FieldLens, I would show up to the office in the morning, and the CEO would also be one of the first two people in the office in the morning. Had a lot of conversations over coffee. I was nervous for a good amount of them. They have opinions, obviously. They're the executives of the company. They are majority stakeholders in some cases. They have made a lot of promises to people who have given them a lot of money, and they have their opinions, and they are going to share them. That is That's just part of the game. So stakeholder management is an always-on day-to-day activity. You're just frequently exposed to your stakeholders, and exposed not in a negative way. They're just you interface with them a lot more than you would at a big company, because at a big company, it's your product, it's your responsibility. You are expected to perform and deliver. Executives and CEOs at a big company, they are overseeing many product teams. They don't have time to bother you every day about what you're doing, and they don't really care about your day-to-day. So you own the product entirely, and you also own the results, for better or for worse, which means that stakeholder management is not as frequent. My team, for example, sends a weekly update to our stakeholders, and it goes up pretty high in the chain every 2 weeks. It usually goes at the same time, more or less, as a release. And we also have a meeting at the last Thursday of every month as a internal stakeholder board meeting, so to speak. Very different from day-to-day, always there. So in a startup, you need to be self-reliant. There are a lot of gaps in a startup. It is very often the case that a startup does not have a QA team, does not have a data team, does not have a UX team, does not have a lot of stuff. You may even be doing marketing. You may even be doing product demos and sales. That's just the way it goes. So you end up wearing more hats. You have more tasks, and you need to be able to depend on your own skills. The skills that you have today, and you need to be smart enough and willing to be able to learn new tasks on the fly. So I didn't know anything about Google Analytics, for example. I had to learn that because nobody else was doing it, and somebody needed to do it, and nobody else was going to do it, so that was my job. So more responsibilities do mean more work, typically, but with more work comes, in my opinion, a sense of liberty, because having to depend on other people and having to get time on other people's calendars is a bit frustrating at times. And in some cases, or at least in my case, it's a lot easier to depend on myself. There are pros and cons to that. We'll get to that in a second. So examples here: product manager as a UX researcher, as a QA person, as a data scientist. In a big company, there are specialist departments, and they are there to help you. And that is great. It's awesome. So you need to be able to engage these specialist departments. For example, right now, my team has a project with our UX research team, which is something I would have otherwise never had the ability to engage with. But in order to engage with that, I had to start the conversation with them back in December. You need to be able to engage these departments early on so that you can actually get time on their calendar, because their resources are not infinite. So you have less PM responsibilities because you have people that are helping you, but that means that all of your product-specific work has to be rock solid. All of your analysis about the opportunity has to be rock solid. All of your competitive analyses have to be rock solid. Your roadmap has to be validated. Everything that you do has to be top-notch 100%, because everything else is being done for you or is being helped out, right? So an example is the product manager works with a QA team, UX team, data team, so on and so forth. In a startup, and this might be a little bit controversial, there seem to be no like super old product managers in the room, but in a startup, constant bias for action is a good thing. You always have to be flexible. You always have to react. Startups by nature are vulnerable to things that happen to the product. You're trying to grow a company. Obviously, that's just how it works. The product is heavily tied to the growth of the company. The product needs to be able to react, needs to be able to fix things quickly, needs to be able to take on opportunities when they happen, as soon as they happen. And with this flexibility, you have to have a faster response time. A bias for action is what some people like to call it. And some PMs are actually excellent at this. I've met a few PMs who thrive in this environment, and they are very useful. Hard to find, very useful for the startups. In a big company, too much bias for action can quickly lead to mediocrity. And what I mean by that is that you have to put a lot of thought between every move that you make. Buttoned up and presentable product management is the way to go, because high scrutiny is upon you, right? The Executives expect you to be top-notch performer and to lead a top-notch operation. And if you are twitching and constantly reacting and changing your roadmap and doing everything at the last minute, it's not a good look. It's not a good product strategy, and that's not what executives at big companies like to see. It doesn't mean that you can't be flexible. Obviously, to be a good product team, you have to be flexible, and you have to figure out a middle ground for that flexibility within a consistent roadmap and a consistent analysis based on hard and well thought product work. So some PMs really like this, and they don't like the other way around. I cannot say why some PMs thrive in this environment versus some PMs thrive in the startup environment. That's just what I've seen from the people that I know in product. In a startup, this should be no surprise to everyone. You work with a lack of resources. You have to make do with what you got. This is why you also wear many hats. But unfortunately, you are always understaffed, and you might not always be able to afford another hire. And if you can afford another hire, it might actually be hard to find that person because without the name or a big wallet, top talent is hard to convince to join your company. So you have to make do with what you have. At a big company, it's quite the opposite. It's not to mean that resources are infinite, and when I say resources, I'm talking about mostly people. I don't mean to be negative in talking about people as resources here, but it's kind of a catch-all. So you are fighting for resources with other teams. The company has the means and they have the people. You will hear a lot of PMs and people in general in big companies talk about headcount. And headcount means exactly what you think it means. But in order to get headcount, you have to put forth a very strong argument. You have to build a case for why your team should get headcount instead of another team. And that's either pulling from the existing pool of resources or pulling from the approved headcount for people to go higher later on. That is not easy. This is pretty difficult. And you are competing against people who are also top performers and can also put forth a strong case to compete against yours. Fortunately, though, when you do get the ability to go higher, having a big paycheck and a name certainly does help. So let's talk about the skills that you need to succeed in both of these environments. There's a few constants, I think, or that have rather helped me succeed in both of these environments, and I would like to share those with you. A few of these are very strong opinions of mine, and you may disagree, and that's okay. So the first one is be selfless. You have to facilitate and you have to empower others. This is extremely important. Product management, it's not about you. You do not have the answers. You do not have all the solutions. You are not the user. If you build a product for yourself, you will fail because you are not your customer. And even in cases where you either were your customer in the past or you will have a very similar profile and understanding to your customer, you have to put that aside. And you have to behave like a product manager and devote yourself to the craft, which we'll talk about a little later. So a good product manager doesn't make all the decisions or come up with all the ideas or have all the solutions. A good product manager points in the right direction and facilitates the team towards getting there. You have to cultivate an environment of collaboration so that your team will collectively get there. And that's how good product teams work, right? If you just tell people what to do, that's not a very sustainable product environment for your team. So be selfless, facilitate others. Listen, cultivate empathy towards your users. At the same time that you are not the user, you, in most cases, and you'll hear this a lot in the definition of a product owner, you have to represent the user, and that's very true, which means that you have to listen carefully when people talk to you. If you have time, 15 minutes with a user on the phone, you have to cherish that time. People are giving you their time out of their day to be able to talk to you about how much your product sucks in some cases, or how much they love it in other cases, or somewhere in between. If you take interest in their opinion, they will take interest in helping you out. And that's honestly a really cool thing to see from a people perspective when you talk to your users. How you do that is that you actually have to think about the user and you have to put yourself in their shoes and you have to kind of unearth the context of their opinion. They're looking at your product from a perspective. You have to define that perspective and why they're looking at it from that point of view. And then you have to find out what their intent is, right? What their purpose. Why are they even using your product in the first place? Many times users will, sometimes even executives, but users will come to you, hey, you need to do this on your product. And they will come to you with a solution. You've probably heard this before. If I was building an email app and a user came to me and said, hey, I need to be able to attach a screenshot from my phone to an email compose page. And I said, okay, I want to find the intent. Like, what are you trying to do? I'm trying to share something, an image. Okay, all right. Or will there ever be a case where you need to share a document or any other type of thing that's not a screenshot? Yeah, maybe, okay, that'll come into that case, and so on and so forth. And you have to see past the words, see past the actions, and find the actual intent of that person. In that particular case is, I want to share something that I cannot write, so I have to attach it by other means. Lead with a purpose, intent, and motivation. Product is 100% a leadership position. Absolutely no question about it. Is the leadership position I wrote. So when I say we lead with a purpose, I mean that you have to be sure that when you are going to commit your team's time, you got to be sure that that time is worth it, right? That thing that you want to go do, that project, that opportunity, that problem you want to go solve is 100% worth the effort. And that understanding the purpose behind that starts with you. You need to be able to look at opportunities, and you need to be able to analyze the value in actually going to do them. And when you decide that something is worth going to do, is it worth building an email app in the first place when there are a gazillion other email apps? Like, why would mine be different? You need to go to your team and you need to share the story. You need to share the meaning behind the opportunity, the problem, so on and so forth. And you need to give the context. When I kick off all the projects with my team, I don't tell them what we're going to go do. I hold a meeting that we like to call story time. And in story time, all we do is talk about the context. And I usually prepare a document that I share with the team, and it shares the story. Why is this important? What is the purpose behind why we are going to do this particular thing? In the example of the screenshot that I showed, that was a construction blueprint viewer on mobile. My team had to understand why we are doing this in the first place. Well, the reason why we are doing it is because when people build physical space, they need a reference point. So if you can share this story well, two things will happen. One, everyone will know and understand why you are doing things. And it becomes a lot easier for you to manage your team. Secondly, at least in the case of my product, we are helping people do their job, and helping others feels good. It's share that feeling with your teammates, right? So let them understand why their work is important and why their work is helping somebody else, and allow them to take joy in actually delivering it. Releasing is great when you have a product that is valuable to users and you're putting that in their hands. Like, that's awesome. Being able to share that instead of just, hey, put this pixel there, change this icon to this size. You're not going to get that with just telling people what to do. People need a purpose. That purpose cultivates intent, and that intent turns into motivation. And that is the nature of good teams. So data-driven, data-centric, data, absolutely everything. This is important, and I could talk about this all day, but I won't. Data is the truth. Numbers don't lie. Anecdotal information, user quotes, your user interviews, those are super important and will give you a lot of context and will help you put yourself into the user's shoes. But by definition, they have a lot of confounding variables. Everybody is different. If you want to look at mass behavior or overall behavior on your product, you need to actually look at hard data. When I talk about hard data here, I'm talking about usage, whether it's via relational database, whether it's via tap, click events, Google Analytics, you name it. So data, a couple of other things. Making an argument, for example, for headcount with data, irrefutable. Right? There's not opinion. If you take opinion out of the equation, your arguments become more solid by nature. Moving numbers motivates everyone. And my team, every day, we look at our OKR, which is our goal for that quarter, which is to get a certain percentage of usage in a certain environment. And seeing that number tick up is super motivating. Putting out a release and then 1 week later seeing 2 percentage points goes up, that is super motivating for you and for your team. That is the manifestation of value in a number, and that is awesome. You can't get that with anecdotes and just user quotes. So data goals are your proof of good product. They are effectively your receipt that you have done a job well done. And here's the part that sometimes, this is a little controversial. Any product manager worth their salt knows SQL. SQL or some equivalent of it. You need to be able to navigate your way around the database. You need to be able to answer your own business questions. You can't sit there and twiddle your thumbs and wait for a data analyst, even if there is a data department, to come answer your questions. It's not the way it works. The data team at WeWork prefers to work with me because I am good at SQL and I understand data. Whereas other product managers just kind of send requests to them. They're like, okay, now I have to go build this query to answer this one particular question for this product manager to know whether or not to pick a button red or blue. Find out why you should go with red or blue by yourself is basically what I'm getting at. The value, ultimately, this is kind of like skydiving. I can show you pictures of me skydiving. I can describe it to you with words, but unless you actually do it, you're not really going to know what that feels like. And it's very similar to being a data-focused product manager. So the value of being a data-focused product manager is a right reserved only for those who have achieved it. If you don't know, and you're missing out. So learn SQL. There's a class here. I highly recommend it. It will pay you dividends over and over and over again. It's also pretty fun. Measure everything. Do not fly blind. So there's two things here. First of all, measurement is how you know where you stand today, and measurement is how you can verify or not that you have succeeded, that you have built a good product and that you have achieved your goals. If you cannot measure something, then how will you ever know if you built the right thing, or if you succeeded, or if the opportunity was even worth chasing in the first place? The second thing is not everything is easy to measure. I spoke about relational databases. I spoke about segment, click events, Google Analytics, all these fancy tools that are very useful. Sometimes that's not the case. Guerrilla tactics must be applied, and they count. I have sometimes had to physically count in order to measure the success of my product. I have an example later on. But just because it doesn't come in a fancy tech form doesn't mean that it's not valuable measurement. So there is no success without measurement. Otherwise, how else would you know? Measure everything. Run an open book operation. Absolutely no secrets. I do not mean to say that product managers hide their stuff. Most don't. That's not really a problem that happens, or at least not a problem that I've encountered. What I mean to say with this is that you need to write everything down. And when I say everything, I'm not joking. You need to write down your meeting notes. You need to write down decisions that you make. You need to write down your requirements. You need to write down your roadmaps. You need to write down your user interviews, your brainstormings, your design approach, everything. Why? First of all, because if you keep it in your head, you're going to forget. And second of all, because if other people can't see it, it's a secret. It's in your head. If other people can't quickly go see what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you got there, and what you're using to measure it, it's effectively your own world that you're keeping to yourself, and it is effectively a secret. So you need to run an open book operation. At a company like WeWork, transparency is huge, because my executives know that if they haven't received an email update, because it's sometime in the middle of the week between our email update cadence, they can just go to my page in the wiki and hit refresh and see where our numbers are at and answer their own business questions. It's a lot easier for me to direct people towards the documentation than it is for me to answer all of their little questions that they have, and they have a lot of little questions. As the same is true in a startup. In a startup is actually maybe even more valuable, because 3 or 4 months down the line, as things change so quickly, you need to be able to figure out, why did we make this page accessible from point A and not from point B? And if you can't remember that and you make a wrong decision down the line, you might be compromising your product. So don't hold it all in your head. No one can access there, and yes, you are going to forget. We are humans, it happens. Next thing is negotiate towards delivery. Negotiation is a big part of a product manager's job. We are constantly negotiating with stakeholders. We are constantly negotiating with users on, I can't build that for you, but I can give you this thing instead. Perhaps we are constantly negotiating with your team. This one is specific to your team. So negotiate towards delivery. It is hard to get people to do consistent commitments. The bigger the size of your team, the more true this is. You, as a product manager, always need to be delivering value, no matter what type of product that you have, no matter what type of team that you have. It's 2019. People release app updates on the App Store every 2 weeks, like clockwork. This is how they get there. You have to be able to apply all of the tools in your case or whatever. So if you must split a project into versions, great. If you must say, all right, this is going to be hotfixed later and then revealed to the users because we're shipping the code now, but it's not actually being used yet, great. If you need to use feature flags, go for it. If you have a beta program, excellent. Deliver value to the beta users first. Get a small validation of usage and then go full out. You might need to use controlled rollouts because the app might be available in English, but it's not available in Spanish, so you can't go out to Latin America yet. Use all the tools at your disposal. And always negotiate the team towards getting to a delivery. Every sprint planning session that my team has, we negotiate on what we can deliver in the next 2 weeks. We have 2 week sprints. And we write those down. So we can release this version with the following features, this version with the following features, and this other version with the following features. There's multiple client apps in my case. But it is a negotiation. People want to release. Releasing feels great. But if you are the person in the room that's saying, we can't go out until this button is red, then you're not negotiating towards delivery. You are doing the opposite. You're putting roadblocks into place. You want to facilitate delivery and facilitate releases. Bring the donuts and don't forget to share them. I love to snack and I will easily eat all the donuts in a box. So the last part is kind of a reminder for myself. But what I mean to say here is that celebrating wins is important. It is very easy to forget in today's work environment to pause and say, hey, you've done a good job. Just that's especially in New York City where everybody's always on, always working, always everything, and we needed that delivered yesterday. It's easy to forget, so you need to celebrate your wins when you have them. I have a note here about high-performing teams are like Formula One race cars, and that is true because high-performing teams require maintenance and fine-tuning. You need to be constantly looking at the output of your team, who is performing and who is not. And I do not mean to say that not performing is a bad thing. We are humans. If you have a team of 5 people, it's very rare that every person on the team is going to be firing on all cylinders at the same time. People have personal issues that happen, right? Somebody might be a little depressed. Somebody might have a death in the family. All sorts of things that happen outside of the office affect team performance. And you need to be able to keep an eye on that. Because if somebody's having a bad time in their personal life and you're just putting more and more and more pressure on them at work, that's how people get burnt out. That's why people quit. That's how you lose good engineers, and that's how you get good talent out the door. You need to be able to know your team, and you need to be able to keep an eye on it and see how the fluctuations happen, because they do. This part takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of personal knowledge and experience with your team that I have been fortunate to have. Like you probably won't be able to do this if your team is just a month old or not, but this is something that good product managers keep an eye on for sure. So pause and celebrate your wins and reset for the next challenge. Lastly, and I mentioned this before, commit to the craft or GTFO. This is real. Product is hard. Welcome to the club. Approach product as your craft, right? It is like a blacksmith would approach their craft or an architect approaches their craft. There are skills and intricacies of the discipline that are hard, and you're not going to get them on the first try, and that's fine. Product management overall is like any sport or like any set of skills. Practice makes perfect. And if you're in it and you think that you're going to be good at it on your first try, sorry, but that's probably not the case. So seek out where you can learn new technologies, learn new ways of working, learn new things about your team. Maintain your strong opinions, but keep an open mind to new information. And introspection is key. Seek out your weaknesses. For example, until recently, I was really bad at hiring. I would interview a candidate and be like, "Yeah, cool, yeah, hire him, go for it." And then my boss was like, I don't think this is a good idea. So we worked on that together, and I sought help in, hey, can you help me interview better and be able to make a better decision on candidates? And I am slightly better now than I was before. So as Greg LeMond said, it does not get easier. You just go faster in product management. It's not just about being faster. It's you build better products, you build bigger teams, you take on bigger opportunities, you make more money, all the good stuff. So which one is right for you? Now we're going to quickly talk about the differences in product skill sets. And then we'll do a quick question on, maybe this will help you figure out which one you like best. So a startup product manager is comfortable with enormous amounts of uncertainty. Uncertainty about your job, uncertainty about what you're going to do tomorrow, if it's going to change the roadmap, uncertainty if the stakeholder decides to change their opinion suddenly and you have no good argument against it. With that comes the ability to make good decisions with limited information. So you need this part is hard and it requires the next point, which is good intuition. I don't know if this can be taught. I don't think that it can be taught. Some people have it, some people just don't. And that is this might not be true across the board. Some people are better at making decisions with limited information within a certain context of a product. For example, we recently hired an ex-construction manager on my team. I know that he can, to a certain extent, rely on his own opinion if he should have limited information. That's an example of intuition. But this is hard, and I wouldn't really rely on it. But if you have it, then excellent. And startups, this is one of the things that has people thrive in the startup environment. You need an "I will figure it out" mentality because, frankly, that is the case in most product situations in a startup. If you don't know if a design is going to work or not, then how are you going to figure it out? We literally put ads on Craigslist and offered people $50 to come in and do a prototype test because we needed to make a very big decision. And we got some weird people in the door, but yeah, I wouldn't actually recommend doing that. There's a product called usertesting.com, which is a lot better that we found out after doing that. But you need to be able to figure things out, and you need to be able to get creative, and you need to be able to learn new skill sets quickly. I learned SQL by myself out of the need because my boss was basically like, if you don't know SQL, you're gonna have to get out. So. Yeah, I figured it out. So big companies, on the other hand, it is a corporate environment. You need to be able to play the game. Navigating the corporate environment and navigating a big company is a skill set in and of itself. And when you look at some of the leveling guidelines for product managers in places like Google and Facebook, one of the things that senior product managers have that junior product managers don't is they can navigate the organization independently and without help. Like, figure it out. Find a way to find the right person, the right stakeholder, the right user, the right whatever that you need. Navigating this environment and being able to play the politics game is a unique skill that big company PMs have, and frankly, in some cases it's fun, in some cases it's not. You need to be able to influence other teams. This is very true in big company product management because these other teams are not just other product teams, but if you want the data team to constantly help you, you need to be able to prove why you have better the data than another team, for example. You need to be able to affect your influence. If you want to have the best resources within a company, you need to be able to have influence. People need to know not necessarily who you are, but at least of the reputation of your team. That's how influence manifests itself in big companies, and that pays off. You need to be comfortable with large commitments and delivering. You need to be comfortable with being able to promise a lot. We're going to go start this new product, and we're going to have X thing and affect X metric in 6 months. That's a big bet. And you need to be able to get buy-in on that bet. You need to be able to then turn around and go execute it. It's like a mini startup mentality within product, but you need to be able to define what you're going to go do in a year or what you're going to achieve in a year, and you need to actually deliver that. Because if you don't deliver that, you're not going to be working at a big company for much longer. You are effectively the product champion within a larger set of product people, which is, you're basically the face of the product. You don't have that problem in startups, so that's a skill that you don't quite need. You are able to delegate effectively and get results from others. Your product managers are busy. Everyone is in large companies where you are working with supporting teams and specialized teams. You need to be able to delegate effectively. Who's going to do what, when are they going to deliver by, and how to coordinate all of that into an actual product exercise and a delivery. So ultimately, I think it depends on how you learn which one is right for you. If you are the type of person that likes to learn lessons the hard way, startups are better for you, I think. I mean, it comes at a cost, but you are exposed to more things. You are exposed to marketing, sales, data, executives, stakeholder management. You might even get to present to the board at a startup. You're not going to get that at a big company. And if you like learning lessons the hard way, that's the way to go. If you like having a path laid out for you, a bigger company is typically the way to go. Bigger companies have plans for people to follow, and if you hit certain milestones, you get promoted, and there's a few motions. It's not, don't want to say that it is you just do the motions, because you don't, because they're hard, but there definitely is a plan for you at big companies, where there is not at startups, because they're not focused on that kind of stuff. They're focused on surviving and growing and being successful. So another way to put it is, if you go on vacation and you like to get there and then figure out your hotel, you go to a startup. If you're the kind of person that likes to travel without plans, startup. If you are like the type of person that likes to have a meticulous plan for where you are going to eat dinner, on what day, with who, at what time, make reservations for everything, big company is probably the way to go for you, because you're going to be very uncomfortable in a startup.